When a narcissist finally sees that you are no longer easy to control, something shifts inside them. They do not feel happy for you. They do not admire your growth. They feel exposed. The moment they notice you are stronger, calmer, and more independent, they begin to feel their grip slipping. And that is often when the last move begins. It does not always look loud. It does not always come with rage. Sometimes it comes in silence first, a strange quiet, a distant tone, a cold pause that hides a storm underneath. Because what many people miss is this: when their old tricks stop working, they usually do not leave with peace. They prepare one final attempt to pull you back in. One more emotional hit, one more confusing scene, one more trap designed to shake your mind and make you question all the healing you fought so hard to build. And if you do not see it clearly, you can step right into it without even noticing. That is why this matters. That is why you need to hear this all the way through. Because before that final move shows up, there is usually a hidden struggle happening inside them. On the outside, they may look calm, detached, maybe even uninterested, but underneath, they are reacting to something that terrifies them. Their deepest fear is not simply being left. It is seeing someone they once controlled become emotionally stronger than they are. That moment threatens the image they built for themselves. Narcissists depend on feeling superior. They need to believe they are more powerful, more important, more special than the people around them. That belief becomes part of their identity, but that identity is weak, it is fragile, and instead of facing their own pain, they push it onto others. They blame, they judge, they attack, they project, they do anything except look inward. So when you begin to heal, when you stop begging for approval, stop over-explaining, stop reacting in the old way, they do not see growth, they see danger, and that danger makes them desperate. Healing usually does not look dramatic at first. It looks quiet. It looks like trusting your own judgment again. It looks like saying no without giving a long speech. It looks like setting a boundary and not feeling guilty for having one. It looks like choosing peace over chaos. It looks like no longer defending every little thing just to be understood. To you, that is progress. To them, that is loss. You are no longer playing the part they assigned to you. You are no longer easy to pull, easy to confuse, easy to shame, and that changes the balance. Narcissists are not chasing deep connection. They are chasing control. They look for reactions. They feed on influence. They want access to your emotions because your reactions help them feel powerful. When you were unsure of yourself, they felt strong. When you doubted your own mind, they felt important. When you kept going back to them for reassurance, they felt above you. Your insecurity became their fuel. Your confusion became their advantage. And that is why these relationships are so draining. They often are not built on mutual respect. They are built on dependence, control, and emotional imbalance. But the moment you begin standing in your own truth, the whole structure starts to shake. You stop chasing their approval, you start listening to your inner voice, you stop fearing their silence, their anger, their judgment, and once that happens, they often reach for one of their darkest tactics. Stay with me here, because this is where many people get pulled back in. When simple blame no longer works, they go deeper. They begin to project everything inside them that they cannot face. Suddenly, you are the selfish one. You are the cruel one. You are the unstable one. You are the difficult one. They throw words at you that do not match your character because they are not really describing you. They are handing you pieces of themselves and hoping you will carry them. That is the trick. That is the setup. And if you are not careful, it can feel so personal that you start believing it. What makes this stage so dangerous is how subtle it can be. It does not always sound like an attack. Sometimes it sounds soft, sometimes it sounds worried, sometimes it even sounds loving. They may say they are concerned about you. They may tell you that you have changed. They may say you are not the same person anymore. They may hint that therapy changed you for the worse. They may suggest that your boundaries made you cold, that your self-respect made you arrogant, that your clarity made you hard to love. But the real goal is simple. They want you to doubt your growth. They want you to step back from the healthier version of yourself and return to the version they could manage. And that is why this hits so deeply. It targets your identity. It attacks the very part of you that is finally waking up. As people heal, they become more connected to their own values. They stop letting fear and guilt decide everything. They stop shaping themselves around someone else's moods. For a narcissist, that feels threatening. Your peace exposes their chaos. Your confidence exposes their insecurity. Your independence reminds them of the control they lost. So instead of facing that truth, they try to drag you back into confusion. They may bring up old mistakes. They may replay moments when you were broken, tired, or vulnerable. They may rewrite the story completely. Suddenly they were always the supportive one. Suddenly they always wanted the best for you. Suddenly they sound reflective, sorry, almost changed. But be careful. Real accountability does not come with bait attached. Real accountability does not ask for access in exchange for regret. Manipulation gives you just enough softness to reopen the door. And once that door opens, they begin testing again. They watch to see if you still explain yourself too much, if you still rush to prove your heart, if you still panic when misunderstood, if you still get emotional when accused. Because every reaction tells them something. Every defense gives them information. Every bit of confusion gives them hope that the old cycle can still be revived. And that is why this final trick works on so many people. It does not fight your logic. It hits your emotions first. You may start feeling guilty even when you know you did nothing wrong. You may begin wondering if your growth really did make you harder, colder, less patient. You may question decisions that once felt clear. You may even find yourself missing a version of the relationship that never truly existed. And that confusion is exactly what they want. They depend on it, because confusion keeps you open. Confusion keeps you explainable. Confusion keeps you emotionally available to manipulation. But awareness changes everything. The moment you understand that their accusations are often reflections of their own inner struggle, you stop carrying them as truth. The moment you realize that not every feeling placed on you belongs to you, the spell begins to break. You stop taking responsibility for emotions that were never yours to hold. You stop defending yourself against false stories. You stop trying to win understanding from someone who benefits from misunderstanding you. And when that happens, their influence weakens fast. Narcissists depend on emotional reactions. Calmness disrupts them. They depend on endless arguments. Silence starves them. They depend on your self-doubt. Clarity ends the game. That is why their final move can feel so dramatic. It is not true strength, it is panic. It is a desperate effort to protect an identity built on power over others. Your calm feels threatening because it cannot be pulled apart. Your silence feels threatening because it cannot be managed. Your confidence feels threatening because it no longer depends on their approval. And none of that is cruel. It is growth. It is proof that you are no longer willing to shrink just to keep the peace. Let that sink in. Because once you truly understand this, something important happens. You stop trying to convince them of your heart. You stop trying to prove your intentions. You stop sacrificing your peace just to keep a broken connection alive. Instead, you choose something cleaner, something stronger. You choose self-respect. You choose clarity. You choose peace. And that changes the whole story. Real strength is not controlling people. Real strength is knowing yourself. It is staying rooted in your truth even while someone else tries to twist it. It is continuing forward without stepping back into the old confusion just because it feels familiar. And once you do that, you complete a cycle they cannot follow. They may leave. They may come back later with a different tone. They may test old wounds and try new tactics. But once you fully see the pattern, it does not hit the same way anymore. You stop reacting from fear. You stop reacting from guilt. You stop reacting from emotional fog. You begin responding from awareness. And awareness protects you before the damage reaches your heart. It helps you spot projection before you wear it like your own skin. It helps you stay grounded in reality when someone else is trying to bend it. That is when their control really ends. Not when they walk away, not when they say sorry, not when they finally understand you. Their control ends when you no longer need them to tell you who you are. And once that happens, the final move loses its power. You become stronger than the guilt they once used, stronger than the fear they once planted, stronger than the confusion they once created. Most of all, you become free. And freedom is the one thing they cannot control. But there is another layer to this, and if you miss it, it can still pull you backward. When direct pressure stops working, they often switch to something softer, something that sounds emotional. They start talking about the past. They bring up old memories, shared moments, familiar places. They tell you they miss how things used to be. They say you smiled more back then. They say life felt easier before everything changed. They may even suggest that things only became difficult once you started focusing on yourself. And at first, it can sound sincere. It can sound touching. It can sound like love. But look closer. They are not always missing the real you. They are missing the version of you that was easier to influence, the version that asked fewer questions, the version that gave more than they gave back, the version that ignored your own needs just to keep things calm. That is the trap of nostalgia. It edits the past, it softens the pain, it highlights the beautiful moments, and hides the damage that came with them. And if you are not grounded, you may begin to miss something that was never truly healthy. You may remember the warmth and forget the confusion. You may remember the closeness and forget the control. You may start longing for a time that feels better in memory than it ever felt in real life. And that is where many people slip. They begin comparing their stronger self to the older version of themselves and wonder if healing made them too distant, too guarded, too different. But the truth is much simpler. Growth often feels strange because it asks you to stop betraying yourself. It asks you to stop calling self-sacrifice love. It asks you to stop confusing emotional survival with peace. And when nostalgia no longer works, when the memories do not pull you back, they may shift again. Suddenly they seem vulnerable. Suddenly they are overwhelmed. Suddenly they appear lost, drained, emotionally broken, or in crisis. And notice the timing. It often happens right when you are finally becoming steady, right when your boundaries are getting stronger, right when you are hardest to control. They understand your heart. They know you care deeply. They know you have empathy. They know you do not like seeing people suffer, and they know how to use that. Then a crisis appears. Something has gone wrong. There is emotional pain, money trouble, family conflict, loneliness, fear, instability. The details may change, but the pattern is familiar. The stronger you become, the more urgent their situation suddenly feels. And this is one of the most effective forms of manipulation because it does not attack your weakness. It targets your goodness. It uses your compassion against you. It makes you feel that protecting yourself is cruel, that keeping boundaries means abandoning someone in need. And once that pressure enters, you can feel trapped between two painful choices: continue your growth or rescue them from the consequences of their own chaos. A lot of people do not notice how often this repeats. Sometimes the very crisis they need help with was created by their own choices. They ignored responsibility. They made reckless decisions. They created confusion, then turned around and asked you to clean it up. They avoided accountability, then reached for your patience when the consequences arrived. On the surface, it may look like they simply need support, but underneath, something else is happening. They want reassurance that they still matter more than your boundaries. They want proof that they can still reach into your time, your energy, your emotions, and your peace whenever they choose. Most of all, they want evidence that your limits are not real. That is why they ask for the very things you clearly said you would no longer do. They ask for closeness after you asked for space. They ask for help in ways that cross the line you worked hard to build. They push where you already said no. And they rarely do it in an obvious way. The request sounds small, temporary, harmless, reasonable. They say it is just this once. They say the situation is different now. They say nobody else understands. They say your support would mean everything. But listen carefully. These lines are not random. Every exception weakens your boundary. Every emotional appeal tests your resolve. Every compromise opens the door wider. So the issue is often not the request itself. The issue is whether they can still move your decisions through guilt, and if you give in, even a little, the old cycle can begin again, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. The guilt grows stronger, the clarity gets softer, the confidence you spent months building starts to blur at the edges, and the price is bigger than people realize. You do not just lose time, you do not just lose energy. You begin losing trust in yourself. You teach yourself that someone else's pressure matters more than your own well-being. You teach yourself that your needs can wait, that your limits are flexible, that your peace is negotiable, and that lesson can cost you more than the relationship ever did. This is why that stage can feel so confusing. It does not look like manipulation at first. It looks like kindness. It looks like helping someone who appears hurt. It looks like compassion. But compassion and self-abandonment are not the same thing. Compassion lets you care without losing yourself. Self-abandonment asks you to disappear in order to prove that you care. And narcissistic dynamics often depend on that disappearance. They depend on your willingness to ignore your own inner signals and prioritize their urgency over your stability. So when they come to you with pain, with sadness, with a story that pulls at your heart, the question is not only, do they need help? The deeper question is, what happens to me when I say yes? Do you stay grounded, or do you start slipping back into anxiety? Do you feel clear, or do you feel foggy and responsible for things that are not yours? Do you feel generous, or do you feel trapped? Your body often knows before your mind catches up. Pay attention to that, because healing is not just about seeing manipulation in obvious moments. It is about seeing it when it arrives dressed as tenderness. It is about noticing when your empathy is being turned into an entry point. It is about remembering that you can wish someone well and still refuse to step back into a cycle that harms you. That is not cruelty. That is wisdom. That is maturity. That is what growth looks like in real life. And if this message is landing hard, that may be because you have lived it. You have felt the pull, the guilt, the second guessing, the sudden flood of old emotions when you were finally starting to feel free. But hear this clearly. Your healing is not proof that you became cold. Your boundaries are not evidence that you became selfish. Your peace is not a betrayal of anyone. If someone only felt comfortable with you when you were anxious, confused, and easy to control, then what they loved was not your freedom. It was your compliance. And once you see that, the whole picture changes. You stop chasing closure from people who create confusion. You stop proving your goodness to people who only feel powerful when you doubt yourself. You stop trading your peace for moments of approval that never last, and that is when your life begins to open. From that point on, you move differently. You still care, but you care with discernment. You still love, but you do not confuse love with access. You still have empathy, but you no longer let empathy drag you into places that destroy your peace. You learn that someone else's emergency is not always your responsibility. You learn that being needed is not the same as being valued. You learn that guilt is not always a sign you are doing something wrong. Sometimes it is just the feeling that rises when you stop doing what others trained you to do. That is a powerful shift, and yes, they may keep trying. They may come back with charm, with regret, with stories, with crises, with memories, with blame, with softness, with distance, with one more message that seems impossible to ignore. But once you understand the pattern, you do not have to answer it the old way. You do not have to defend every truth. You do not have to explain every boundary. You do not have to rescue people from the storms they create just so they can call you loyal. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay still. Stay clear. Stay out of the drama. Let them have their version. Let them tell their story. Let them misunderstand you if misunderstanding is what keeps the old system alive for them. Your job is not to win against manipulation. Your job is to stop volunteering for it. And once that happens, the final trick loses its force. Because it only works if it can still pull on something inside you that has not healed. So keep going. Keep choosing what is real over what is familiar. Keep choosing peace over performance. Keep choosing your own mind over their version of you, because the day you stop needing their approval is the day their last move begins to fail. And when that happens, something beautiful takes its place. Not revenge, not bitterness, freedom, clean, quiet freedom, the kind that lets you breathe again. The kind that lets you trust yourself again. The kind that no longer asks you to shrink so someone else can feel big. And once you have tasted that freedom, truly tasted it, you begin to understand something they never could. Real power is not making others weaker. Real power is becoming so clear inside yourself that no one can sell you confusion again.